Welcome back, dear friends and story lovers. Tonight, we bring you a tale where love is tested, secrets come to light, and fate takes an unexpected turn. Every moment will pull you in deeper, and every choice could change everything. Tell us where you're watching from in the comments, and if this story touches your heart, like, subscribe, share it with someone who believes in true love, and hit the bell so you never miss the next chapter. The gunshot echoed through the abandoned warehouse, and Marcus Kane felt the bullet graze his shoulder as he dove behind a shipping container.
Ow.
Blood seeped through his white dress shirt, staining the fabric dark crimson. His phone buzzed with another death threat, the fifth one today. "You can't hide forever, Kane," a voice called from the shadows. "The Kozlov family doesn't forget." Marcus pressed his back against the cold metal, calculating his next move. 3 years of living under a false identity had bought him time, but his past as a federal witness against the Russian mob was catching up. He needed to disappear again. Find somewhere they'd never think to look. Thunder crashed overhead as rain began hammering the warehouse roof. Through a grimy window, Marcus spotted the warm glow of a small bookstore across the street. Perfect. No one would expect a man like him to hide among dusty novels and quiet corners. The brass bell chimed as he pushed through the door, water dripping from his dark hair onto worn wooden floors. The scent of old books and brewing coffee wrapped around him like a safety blanket. Behind the counter stood the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. She had auburn curls that caught the amber light, green eyes wide with concern as she noticed the blood on his shirt, and an innocence that seemed impossible in his violent world. Everything about her radiated gentleness, from her soft pink cardigan to the way she clutched a worn copy of Pride and Prejudice against her chest. "Oh my goodness, you're hurt," she whispered, moving toward him with genuine worry. "Should I call an ambulance?" "No," Marcus said quickly, his voice rougher than intended. "It's just a scratch. I was hoping to wait out the storm." Celeste Harper had spent 22 years believing in fairy tales and happy endings. She'd never encountered real violence, never seen the kind of darkness that lived in Marcus's eyes. But something about his obvious pain called to her nurturing heart. "Please, sit down," she said, guiding him to a cozy reading corner. "I have a first aid kit. Let me help you." As her gentle fingers worked to clean his wound, Marcus found himself studying her face. There was no calculation behind her kindness. No hidden agenda. When was the last time someone had touched him without wanting something in return? "I'm Celeste," she said softly, her accent carrying the warmth of small-town comfort.
What's your name?
Marcus hesitated. He'd been Sebastian Knight for 3 years now, but somehow lying to this angel felt like a sin. "Sebastian," he said finally. "That's a beautiful name." Celeste smiled, and something cracked open in Marcus's chest. "Like the prince in my favorite fairy tale." "I'm no prince," he said darkly. "Trust me on that." Celeste's hand stilled on the bandage. "Everyone deserves to be someone's prince," she said with quiet conviction. "My grandmother always told me that." Marcus looked into her innocent green eyes and felt something he'd thought dead forever. Hope. This woman still believed in goodness, in redemption, in love, conquering all. She was everything pure that he'd lost when he'd been forced to betray. The mob family who'd trusted him. "You don't know anything about me," Marcus warned, his voice low and dangerous. "I'm not a good man, Celeste." She tilted her head, studying him with surprising wisdom. "Maybe not. But you let me help you win. You could have refused. You haven't once looked at me the way other men do, like I'm something to be taken. And your hands are shaking because you're afraid of frightening me, not because you're weak." The observation hit him like a physical blow. This innocent girl saw through his careful facade to something he'd forgotten existed within himself. "Should go," Marcus said, starting to stand. "Please don't." The words escaped before Celeste could stop them. Something about this mysterious, wounded man called to her heart in ways she didn't understand. The storm isn't over yet. Outside, lightning split the sky, but Marcus knew the real storm was just beginning. He was falling for an angel who deserved so much better than his blood-stained world. "What if I told you I was running from very dangerous people?" he asked quietly. that being near me could get you killed? Celeste's chin lifted with surprising courage. Then I'd say that everyone deserves someone willing to stand beside them in the darkness. Marcus felt his carefully constructed walls crumble as he looked into her fearless green eyes. For the first time in 3 years, he wanted to stop running. 3 weeks had passed since the storm brought Sebastian into Celeste's quiet world, and he'd returned to pages and dreams every day since. He told himself he was just establishing a safe cover, blending into the sleepy town of Millbrook where no one would think to look for Marcus Kane, but the truth was darker and more terrifying than any mob threat. He was falling in love. "You're different today," Celeste observed, looking up from the inventory she was updating. Sunlight streamed through the bookstore windows, casting golden highlights in her auburn hair. Distant. Marcus closed the book he'd been pretending to read and studied her face. 22 years old, and she possessed a wisdom that came from a pure heart rather than bitter experience. She wore a simple blue dress that brought out her eyes, and he found himself imagining what it would be like to wake up to that gentle smile every morning. The thought terrified him. "I've been thinking about what you said," he admitted, "about everyone deserving someone to stand beside them." Celeste set down her pen, giving him her complete attention. It was one of the things he treasured about Hertha, ways she made whoever was speaking feel like the most important person in the world. And what if that person has done terrible things? Marcus's voice dropped too barely above a whisper. If they've betrayed people who trusted them, even if it was for the right reasons. Something flickered in Celeste's green eyes, not fear, but understanding. Are we still talking hypothetically? Marcus stood and moved to the window, watching the peaceful street where children rode bicycles and neighbors waved to each other. Such normalcy seemed impossible after years of looking over his shoulder. "I've never told anyone the complete truth about my life," he said finally. "Not even my name." Celeste's breath caught, but when he turned to face her, he saw only compassion in her expression. "What is your name, Marcus Kane?" The words felt foreign after years of living as Sebastian Knight. 3 years ago, I testified against the Kozlov crime family. They've been hunting me ever since. The silence stretched between them, filled with the weight of his confession. Marcus braced himself for her fear, her disgust, her inevitable rejection. Instead, Celeste stood and walked to him with steady steps. "What did they do that made you risk everything to stop them?" Marcus felt his throat close with unexpected emotion. Of course, she would ask what they'd done, not what he'd done. Even now, she was looking for his nobility rather than his sins. "Human trafficking," he said roughly. "Young girls, some barely 18. I was their financial advisor, managing their legitimate businesses to hide the illegal money. When I found out what they were really funding," shook his head. "I couldn't be part of it anymore." Celeste reached out and took his hand, her small fingers intertwining with his scarred ones. "You did the right thing, did I?" Marcus's laugh was bitter. "I destroyed a family that had taken me in when I had nothing. Viktor Kozlov treated me like a son, trusted me with everything, and I betrayed that trust. To save innocent girls," Celeste said firmly. "That wasn't betrayal, Marcus. That was courage." Hearing his real name on her lips did something to his soul. For 3 years, he'd been a ghost, a shadow of himself. But when Celeste said Marcus, he remembered who he used to be, beneath all the violence and fear. "They'll never stop hunting me," he warned. "And now they'll come for anyone I care about." Celeste stepped closer, and Marcus could smell her soft vanilla perfume, could see the gold flecks in her green eyes. "Is that why you've been pulling away this week?" He nodded, not trusting his voice. "I wish you'd told me sooner," she said. Softly, "I've been wondering what I did wrong." "You did nothing wrong." The words exploded from him with desperate honesty. "You're perfect, Celeste. You're everything good and pure in this world, and I have no right to bring my darkness into your light." "What if I want your darkness?" The question surprised them both. Celeste's cheeks flushed pink, but her gaze remained steady. "Hey, what if?" "I think you've carried it alone long enough." Marcus cupped her face in his hands, marveling at the softness of her skin. "Psst. You don't know what you're saying? I know exactly what I'm saying." Her voice grew stronger, more certain. "I've spent My whole life reading about love that conquers impossible odds. Maybe it's time I stopped just reading about it. Marcus leaned his forehead against hers, breathing in her sweetness, while his heart hammered against his ribs. I've killed people, Celeste, in self-defense, but still. I've seen things that would give you nightmares, then help me understand. She whispered, let me share the burden. Before Marcus could respond, the brass bell chimed, and two men in expensive suits walked into the bookstore. Marcus recognized them instantly, Viktor Kozlov's enforcers. His blood turned to ice as he realized they'd found him. Well, well, the taller man said, his Russian accent thick as honey. Marcus Kane, or should we say Sebastian Knight, led us quite a chase. Celeste instinctively moved closer to Marcus, and he felt sick with terror for her safety. This was exactly what he'd feared would happen. Let her go, Marcus said quietly, stepping protectively in front of Celeste. This is between us. The Russian smiled coldly. Oh, but she's involved now, isn't she? Viktor is very interested in meeting the woman who captured the heart of his most trusted son. Marcus felt Celeste's hand slip into his, squeezing tight. With surprising courage, even now faced with dangerous men, she wasn't abandoning him. Run, he whispered to her. There's a back door. I'm not leaving you, she whispered back. The Russian's smile widened. How touching, young love. Viktor, we'll be so pleased to use it against you both. The warehouse on the outskirts of Millbrook smelled of rust and desperation. Marcus sat tied to a chair, blood trickling from his split lip, watching helplessly as Viktor Kozlov circled Celeste like a predator studying prey. She sat across from him, wrists bound, but chin raised with defiant courage that both terrified and amazed him. Even here, in this nightmare he'd dragged her into. She refused to break. Viktor was older now, his once dark hair silver at the temples, but his pale blue eyes held the same cold calculation Marcus remembered. He wore an expensive charcoal suit that somehow made him more menacing than any street thug. 3 years, Viktor said softly, his accent making the words sound like a caress. 3 years I searched for my adopted son, my greatest disappointment. Let her go, Viktor, Marcus said through gritted teeth. This is about me, not her. Viktor laughed, the sound echoing off the concrete walls. But that's where you're wrong, my boy. Everything changed the moment you chose to love someone more. Then loyalty to family? He stopped in front of Celeste, studying her face with clinical interest. So young, so pure. I can see why she captured your heart, Marcus. She reminds me of my own daughter at that age, before the world taught her harder. Lessons. Celeste met Viktor's stare without flinching. You did the right thing stopping you. Those girls you trafficked were someone's daughters, too. The slap echoed through the warehouse. Marcus lunged against his restraints, the ropes cutting into his wrists as rage consumed him. Touch her again and I'll kill you with my bare hands. Viktor wiped his hand on a silk handkerchief, as if Celeste's innocence had somehow contaminated him. Such fire. I remember when you had that same protective instinct for our family, Marcus. Before you decided to play hero? Those girls were children. Marcus snarled. Some of them younger than Celeste. Business, Viktor said with a casual shrug. Nothing personal? But your betrayal? That was very personal indeed. He walked to a metal table where various instruments lay arranged with surgical precision. Marcus's heart stopped as Viktor picked up a scalpel, testing its sharpness against his thumb. Here's what's going to happen, Viktor continued conversationally. You're going to watch me hurt this beautiful creature until you beg for death. Then I'm going to grant your wish, but not before she understands the cost of loving Marcus Kane. No. The word tore from Marcus's throat like a prayer. Please, Viktor, I'll do anything. Take me instead. Viktor smiled. Oh, I'm taking you both, but ladies first. His approach Celeste with the blade, Marcus felt something crack inside his chest. This was his fault, his past, his choices, his weakness in allowing himself to love her. She deserved so much better than to die because of him. Wait, a new voice called from the warehouse entrance. Everyone turned as Agent Sarah Collins walked in, her FBI badge gleaming in the harsh fluorescent light. She was flanked by a full tactical team, weapons drawn and ready, Marcus's blood turned to ice. Sarah had been his handler, the one person who knew Sebastian Knight's true identity and location, the one person he'd trusted with his life. "Collins," Victor said pleasantly, as if greeting an old friend, right on time. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Sarah's two convenient appearances over the past 3 years. The way the Kozlovs always seemed to be one step behind him but never quite close enough to catch him. The perfect timing of this trap. "You're working for him," Marcus said, his voice hollow with betrayal. Sarah had the decency to look uncomfortable. "Victor pays better than the Bureau. Frankly, Marcus, you were always going to end up dead. This way, at least I profit from it." Celeste stared at Marcus with dawning understanding. "She's been feeding them information about you this whole time. Every safe house, every new identity, every move he made," Victor confirmed cheerfully. "Though I must admit, Agent Collins, you took your time arranging this final meeting." "I was growing impatient," Sarah shrugged. "I needed to make sure he was emotionally invested enough to cooperate. A man in love is so much more manageable." The casual cruelty of using his feelings for Celeste as a weapon hit Marcus like a physical blow. He'd spent 3 years running. From external enemies, never suspecting the real threat was the person sworn to protect him. "The tactical team?" Marcus asked. "Victor's men in FBI gear," Sarah replied. "Convincing, isn't it?" Victor clapped slowly, the sound mocking. "Beautiful. Work, Agent Collins. Though I do think your payment should be reduced for the emotional complications. This would have been much simpler if he'd remained alone." "About that," Sarah said, her tone suddenly changing. "I'm afraid there's been a change of plans." In one fluid motion, she drew her service weapon and put 3 bullets center mass into Victor Kozlov. The crime boss dropped to the concrete floor, his eyes wide with surprise even as the life left them. The warehouse erupted into chaos as Sarah's actual backup team stormed in through every entrance, real FBI agents taking down Victor's confused. Men with professional efficiency. Marcus stared in shock as Sarah cut his restraints with the same casual competence she'd shown arranging his apparent death. What the hell just happened? He demanded. Sarah freed Celeste next, her movements brisk. An efficient, 3-year deep cover operation. Victor never trusted outside contractors enough to reveal his entire network. "I needed him to believe I was completely corrupt before he'd show me everything. You used me as bait," Marcus realized. "I used your genuine feelings to make the deception believable," Sarah corrected. "Victor had to believe you were emotionally compromised, that you'd found something worth dying for. Your love for Celeste made the whole operation possible." Celeste rubbed her wrists where the ropes had cut into her skin, her green eyes bright with unshed tears. "So none of this was real? Marcus's feelings for me were just part of your plan." "No," Marcus said quickly, reaching for her. "Celeste, everything I feel for you is real, I swear to you." But she stepped back, shaking her head. "How can I know? What's real anymore? You lied about your name, your past, everything. And she," Celeste gestured at Sarah, "used our relationship to manipulate us both." Marcus felt her slipping away and knew this was the moment that would define the rest of his life. Victor was dead. The threat was over, but he'd lost something. Far more precious in the process, Celeste's trust. "I never lied about loving you," he said desperately. "That was the one true thing in all of this deception." Celeste looked at him with eyes full of pain and doubt, and Marcus realized that surviving Victor Kozlov might have been the easy part. The real test was winning back the heart of the woman whose love had saved his soul. 2 months had passed since the warehouse, and Marcus Kane was learning that freedom could be its own kind of prison. Victor Kozlov was dead, the trafficking network dismantled. The federal charges against him dropped in exchange for his cooperation. He was finally safe. He was also completely alone. Celeste had returned to her bookstore and her quiet life, but the easy warmth between them had frozen into polite distance. She served him coffee when he visited, recommended books with professional courtesy, and broke his heart a little more each day with her careful smiles. Marcus sat in his newly rented apartment above the hardware store, staring at legal documents that would change everything. Agent Sarah Collins had delivered them personally, along with news that would force him to make an impossible choice. The Kozlov family's legitimate assets are being liquidated, Sarah explained, settling into the chair across from his small kitchen table. As the key witness who brought them down, you're entitled to a substantial portion. We're talking about $47 million, Marcus. He looked up from the papers, his mind immediately going to what that money could mean for Celeste. Her grandmother's medical bills, the struggling bookstore, the dreams she'd never dared pursue because of financial constraints. There's a catch, he said. It wasn't a question. Sarah nodded grimly. The money comes with mandatory relocation. New identity, new city, complete severance from your current life. It's non-negotiable. Too many people know Marcus Kane's face now, and Victor had associates who won't forget or forgive. Marcus felt his chest tighten. How long would I have to stay away? Forever, Sarah said bluntly. This is witness protection at the highest level. You disappear completely, or you're a dead man walking. Through the window, Marcus could see the bookstore across the street. Celeste was arranging a window display, her movements graceful and sure. She wore a yellow sundress that made her look like captured sunshine, and he ached with wanting to hold her again. What if I refuse the money? Then you get nothing, and you still have to disappear, Sarah replied. Marcus, you have no choice about leaving. The only choice is whether you take the money with you. That night, Marcus stood outside Pages and Dreams long after closing time, watching Celeste through the windows as she balanced the day's receipts. Her grandmother Rose sat in the corner, knitting and occasionally offering gentle advice. He'd made his decision, but it would destroy him to execute it. The next morning, Celeste looked up in surprise as Marcus entered the bookstore with a thick, manila envelope and the kind of desperate determination that scared her. We need to talk, he said. She glanced around the empty store, then at her grandmother, who discreetly disappeared into the back room with a knowing smile. If this is about us, Celeste began, but Marcus cut her off. It's about your future. He placed the envelope on the counter between them. There's a check in there for $47 million. Celeste stared at him as if he'd spoken a foreign language. What? The Kozlov assets? I'm entitled to a portion as the witness who brought them down. Marcus's voice was steady, but his hand shook as he pushed the envelope toward her. I want you to have it. Can't possibly accept that kind of money from you. Yes, you can. Marcus moved around the counter, stopping just close enough to smell her vanilla perfume. You can pay off your grandmother's medical bills, expand the bookstore, travel to all those places you've only read about in books. You can have everything you've ever wanted. Celeste shook her head, backing away from him. What I wanted was you. The real you? Not Sebastian Knight, or Marcus Kane, or whoever you're pretending to be now. This is me, Marcus said desperately, standing here, offering you everything I have, because I love you more than my own life. If you loved me, you wouldn't be trying to buy me off. The accusation hit him like a physical blow. That's not what this is, isn't it? Celeste's eyes flashed with hurt and anger. $47 million feels like a very expensive goodbye, Marcus. This was goodbye, the most expensive and heartbreaking farewell in history. I have to leave Millbrook, he said quietly. Tomorrow, new identity, new life, and I can never come back. The color drained from Celeste's face. Why? Because Victor had partners who want revenge. Because my face has been in too many newspapers. Because staying here means putting you in danger for the rest of our lives. Celeste leaned against the counter for support, her green eyes filling with tears she refused to let fall. So you're just going to disappear? I'm going to make sure you're taken care of first. Marcus reached for her hand, relief flooding through him when she didn't pull away. That money is legally yours now. I've already signed the papers. I don't want your money, she whispered. I want you to fight for us. This is me fighting for you, Marcus said fiercely. This is me choosing your safety over my happiness. This is me loving you enough to let you go. Celeste was quiet for a long moment, studying his face as if memorizing every detail. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady, despite the tears on her cheeks. What if I came with you? Marcus felt his heart stop. What? What if I came with you? She repeated, stronger now. New identities, new life, together. Celeste, no. Marcus shook his head violently. You'd be giving up everything. Your grandmother, your bookstore, your home. I'd be choosing love over safety, she said simply. Isn't that what heroines do in the best stories? Marcus cupped her face in his hands, drinking in her beauty one last time. You deserve so much better than a life on the run. Well, I deserve to choose my own life, Celeste said firmly. And I choose you, Marcus Kane. All of you, darkness and light together. For a moment, Marcus let himself imagine it. Waking up beside her in some distant city, building a quiet life away from violence and fear. It was the most beautiful dream he'd ever had. It was also impossible. I won't let you sacrifice your future for me, he said, stepping back before his resolve crumbled completely. Take the money, Celeste. Live the life you were meant to live. He was at the door when she called his name. Marcus. He turned back, memorizing the sight of her standing among the books that had brought them together. I love you too, she said softly. I need you to know that before you go. Marcus felt something break inside his chest as he walked. Away from everything that mattered, carrying her words like a benediction and a curse combined. Behind him, Celeste Harper sank to her knees among the scattered books and finally let herself cry for the love she was losing and the choice she was being denied. Neither of them saw Agent Sarah Collins watching from across the street, her phone, already dialing a number that would change everything once again. 6 months later, Marcus Kane was dying of loneliness in a Seattle coffee shop. He went by David Morrison now, worked as a financial consultant for small businesses, lived in a sterile apartment that held no memories of green eyes and vanilla perfume. The $47 million sat untouched in offshore accounts because money meant nothing without someone to share it with. He'd broken his own rules and kept track of Celeste through carefully encrypted searches. She'd kept the money used. And to expand the bookstore into a literary cafe that was becoming the heart of Millbrook's downtown revival. Her grandmother's medical bills were paid, and Celeste had started a literacy program for underprivileged children. She was thriving without him, just as he'd hoped. It was killing him, just as he'd expected. Marcus was reading about her latest community initiative when his phone rang. The number was blocked, but only one person had this particular line. Agent Collins, he answered warily. We need to meet. Sarah's voice was tight with urgency. Pioneer Square, 1 hour. Come alone. The line went dead, leaving Marcus staring at his phone with growing dread. Sarah only made contact for emergencies, and in his experience, emergencies usually ended with someone bleeding. Pioneer Square was crowded with tourists and street musicians, providing perfect cover for a clandestine meeting. Marcus found Sarah, sitting on a bench near the Tlingit totem pole, her expression grim. Tell me you haven't been monitoring Celeste Harper, she said without preamble. Marcus sat beside her, every nerve suddenly alert. Why? Because Dmitry Kozlov just got out of prison, Sarah said bluntly. Victor's nephew. He's been planning. Revenge for 6 months, and he knows exactly where your heart is. The blood drained from Marcus's face. How? The same way we found out everything else about you. He's been watching, learning, preparing. Sarah pulled out a tablet and showed him surveillance photos of Celeste at the bookstore. Walking to her car, having dinner with her grandmother. He's in Millbrook now. Marcus was already standing, his mind racing through travel times and logistics. I have to warn her. You have to stay away from her, Sarah said firmly. That's exactly what he wants. You show up to play hero, and he gets both of you. Then what do you suggest? Sarah's smile was sharp as a blade. We end this permanently.
Out.
2 hours later, Marcus was on a plane to Portland. His hands clenched into fists as he fought every instinct screaming at him to call Celeste and warn her. Sarah's plan was dangerous but sound. Use Marcus as bait to draw Dmitry away from innocent civilians. The irony wasn't lost on him. After 6 months of running from love, he was running toward death to protect it. Marcus arrived in Millbrook as the sun was setting, painting the familiar streets in shades of gold and crimson. The town looked exactly the same, as if time had stopped when he left. Only his heart felt different, heavier with the weight of choices and consequences. Pages and dreams glowed with warm light. and through the windows he could see Celeste serving coffee to evening customers. She wore a deep blue dress that brought out her eyes, and her hair was longer now, falling in soft waves past her shoulders. She was even more beautiful than his memories, and seeing her again felt like breathing after months of suffocation. Marcus forced himself to walk past the bookstore toward the abandoned mill on the edge of town. Sarah's intel suggested Dmitri would make his move there, away from witnesses. All Marcus had to do was be the perfect target and trust that backup would arrive in time. The mill loomed against the darkening sky like a Gothic cathedral of rust and broken dreams. Marcus checked his weapon one last time and stepped inside. Dmitri Kozlov was waiting in the main floor of the mill, flanked by two armed men. He was younger than Victor, but carried the same cold calculation in his pale eyes. A family resemblance that made Marcus's skin crawl. "The prodigal son returns," Dmitri said in accented English. "How touching." "Let's get this over with," Marcus replied, scanning the shadows for Sarah's team. "Oh, but I'm not ready to end this yet," Dmitri smiled. "First, I want you to see what happens to people who betray the Kozlov family." He gestured to his men, who dragged a bound figure from the shadows. Marcus's heart stopped as he recognized the auburn hair, the gentle green eyes wide with fear. "Celeste." "No," he whispered, then louder, "You son of a bitch, let her go." "Well," Dmitri promised. "After I make you choose, your life for hers. You die, she goes free. Simple transaction." Marcus looked at Celeste, memorizing her face one last time. She was shaking, but her eyes held no blame, only love and desperate worry. "For him done," Marcus said without hesitation. "I'll trade my life for hers." "Marcus, no." Celeste's voice cracked with anguish. But before anyone could move, the mill exploded with sound and fury as FBI agents rappelled through the broken skylights and stormed through every entrance. Sarah's voice cut through the chaos on a bullhorn. "Federal agents, drop your weapons." Dmitri's men opened fire, and Marcus dove toward Celeste as bullets shredded the air around them. He cut her restraints with a knife from his boot, shielding her body with his own as the gunfight raged. "Stay down," he whispered against her hair, breathing in her familiar scent like a prayer answered. "You came back," she whispered, her fingers clutching his shirt. "I never really left." When the shooting stopped, Dmitri Kozlov lay dead beside his uncle's legacy of violence. The last of the family that had haunted Marcus's nightmares was finally gone. Sarah approached as Marcus helped Celeste to her feet, both of them shaking from adrenaline and relief. "It's over," Sarah said simply. "The Kozlov network is completely dismantled. You're free, Marcus, both of you." Marcus stared at her, afraid to believe it. "Free? No more running, no more hiding? David Morrison can disappear, and Marcus Kane can live his life." Sarah smiled. "Congratulations, you've earned your happily ever after." As the agents processed the scene, Marcus and Celeste stood in the mill's courtyard under a canopy of stars. The same stars that had watched over their first meeting during the thunderstorm, when two broken people had found something worth healing. I'm sorry," Marcus said, his voice rough with emotion. "For leaving, for the money, for putting you through this nightmare." Celeste reached up and cupped his face in her hands, just as she had that first night when she'd bandaged his wounds. "You protected me the only way you knew how. But Marcus, yeah, next time you want to sacrifice yourself for love, talk to me first. We're partners now, which means we make those decisions together." Marcus felt something ease in his chest, a knot of fear and loneliness that had been twisted tight for months. "Next time, there's always going to be a next time with you," Celeste said with a trembling smile. "You're far too noble for your own good. It's one of the reasons I love you. Just one of the reasons." Marcus asked, pulling her closer. "I also love your eyes, your hands, the way you read poetry when you think no one's listening, and how you make me feel like the heroine of my own story instead of just a supporting character." Marcus leaned down and kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promises they could finally keep. When they broke apart, Celeste was crying. "Happy tears," she assured him quickly, I'm just not used to fairy tales coming true. Get used to it, Marcus said, resting his forehead against hers. I plan to spend the rest of my life making sure you never stop believing in magic. 6 months later, Pages and Dreams hosted its first wedding reception. The ceremony had been small, just family and close friends gathered in the bookstore where everything began. Celeste wore her grandmother's vintage lace dress, and Marcus wore a suit that wasn't stained with blood for the first time in years. They honeymooned in Paris, where Celeste stood in the Louvre and cried at the beauty of seeing art she'd only known from books. Marcus watched her discover the world with the same wonder she'd brought to their love story, and knew he'd made the right choice in walking away from violence toward grace. Years passed. The bookstore flourished, expanded, became a pilgrimage site for readers seeking their own romantic adventures. Marcus used his financial skills to help other small businesses thrive, and found purpose in building things up instead of tearing them down. They had children who grew up believing in happy endings because they'd seen one with their own eyes. On quiet evenings, when the last customer had gone home and the bookstore settled into contented silence, Celeste would read to her family from whatever novel had captured her imagination that week. And sometimes, when thunder rolled across Millbrook's evening sky, Marcus would remember a frightened man who'd stumbled into a bookstore seeking shelter, and the angel who'd offered him salvation instead. "Do you ever regret it?" Celeste asked one night as they locked up the store together. The running, the danger, the choice to stay. Marcus looked around at the life they'd built together, solid and real, and more beautiful than any fairy tale. Then he looked at his wife, still radiant at 35, still believing in magic, still seeing the best in everyone she met. "Never," he said, and meant it with every scarred piece of his redeemed heart. They walked home together through streets that had witnessed their love story past the mill where their future had been won, under stars that had blessed their beginning in woodlight. Their way forward, some storms destroy everything in their path. But sometimes, if you're very lucky, the storm brings you exactly what you need to rebuild your world into something stronger and more beautiful than before. Marcus. Cain had learned to stop running from love. And love, patient and persistent, and pure, had taught him that some things are worth any price, any risk, any sacrifice. Even a man with blood on his hands could be redeemed by a woman who saw princes in the pages of fairy tales and had the courage to love one into existence. The END.